You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show, as always. And, it's funny because I was going to say something somewhat pithy, like, as we're kicking off summer. But if you guys are living anywhere in the Midwest, it feels like anything but summer right now.
Right.
But hey, you know what? We thought we would do something fun because we've been doing reviews for a while. Last week we had the Tales of the Underground. I think I said it right.
Nope.
Or is it Underworld? I didn't say it right. Well, all right. So much for that, right? So Tales of the Underworld. And then, of course, before that, we were doing Andor. So now we're going to pit a couple of bounty hunters. This actually was something I think that you came up with while we were on the air last week.
Yeah.
Like while we were talking, we were producing on the air, right? And so we're going to talk about who would we rather have on our crew, Cad Bane or Boba Fett. So what basically gave you this idea? Was it the Cad Bane episode of the Tales of the Underworld?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely kind of, and most people would argue between Boba Fett and Cad Bane, that's probably like two of the greatest bounty hunters of all time. Now, most will regard that Boba Fett is the best bounty hunter. I mean, he's kind of been, since he's been introduced to us, that's kind of been his title, right? He's been like the best bounty hunter. So, but in the time that Star Wars has been around, we've seen Bosk, we've seen Cad Bane, we've seen Black Chrysanthemum, we've seen so many different other bounty hunters and so many other different people in this occupation. And, I think some people might actually have a difference of opinion, even though George Lucas himself may have said that Boba Fett is the best. Some might still feel differently.
Yeah, well, I don't think that there's any question that he's the best. I mean, it used to be, back before we had all this animation and everything, that it was Boba Fett versus Bosk, or Boba Fett versus IG-88. Those were usually the two that most people would point to before you had this new generation of bounty hunters.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, everybody widely regards Boba Fett as the best. I don't know if there's anybody necessarily that would argue that. I mean, I'm sure out there in the interwebs somebody is going to argue that, because people argue everything. But you're right. I mean, I think even Lucas himself basically said that Boba Fett was essentially the best. Now, that's why I thought your idea was actually really different, because we did this, it turns out, back in 2019. We pitted Cad Bane and Boba Fett against each other. And, of course, I didn't rewatch that episode purposely. Well, not like I'm in the habit of rewatching our episodes, but every once in a while, it does pop up in my own feed, on my other channels and stuff. So I'm like, you know what? Let me watch it. Let me just see, also for just, our own purposes, right? For improvement. But yeah, I purposely wouldn't have watched this one though, because I don't want to be colored by what we said. Pretty much, you know what was funny about that? It was almost 6 years to the day. This is June 1st, and I think that was like June 19th of 2019 or something.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, who knows?
It repeats itself somewhat.
Yeah, I guess we're on one of those, like, almost like a leap year thing, right? Every so many years. Well, our crew has safely made it in to the stream. We got David, who says, hello, it's Star Wars Day.
Happy belated birthday, David.
Oh, when was his birthday?
What's today, June 1st?
Yeah. Today's Tommy's birthday, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, the general himself.
The general himself. Yesterday, I believe.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
Ron's was like 2 days ago. I mean, we're spitting out all these people that nobody knows.
Like, no one knows.
Like, who? Who are you talking about?
Who's they?
We're acting like we're just having a phone conversation and we're streaming.
That's
All
how
right.
much you guys are family to us.
That's
So
right.
we
Yeah,
talk to you
exactly.
guys like you're our
That's it.
family.
That is it. That's what it comes down to. Dragonfly says Cad Bane crosses lines, Boba Fett won't. Boba Fett is more versatile, but Cad is far smarter than Fett. So this will be interesting because, again, remember, I mean, look, certainly we can have the discussion about who's better and why and all this other stuff. But the main thing is, who would you, if you had the choice of taking one of these guys on your team,
Right.
assuming you were intergalactic bounty hunters, I realize you have to, you gotta
Right.
maybe stretch your lives a little bit, but
Exactly.
if you were in the Star Wars universe and you could have either one of these guys, who would it be? And again, I do actually have a chart that I made that we can put up, and basically it'll help us compare the two. And then, of course, Universal joins us. Evening, gentlemen. And then,
Evening.
yeah, everybody is saying all kinds of stuff. And then, of course, Universal also says Star Wars Day indeed. And it's going to catch on. And then Universal's putting out there right away, like Boba Fett.
Okay.
I mean, well, and this is the thing. Now, between these two guys, do you have some sort of a preference? I mean, I guess we could probably just pick our guys right out the bat, or
pick our guys and get to it.
Yeah, I mean, we could, I guess. I mean, because what it would be is almost like, okay, what would your first instinct be? Like, if you just based on what you know, what you've seen, and then when you start to actually get into it and think about it, you guys, us, we might all change our answers by the end of this.
My first initial instinct is Cad Bane.
Yeah, that would be my first initial instinct too. Just because even though Boba Fett's probably the most well-rounded one, I think Cad Bane's ruthlessness probably would come in more handy in a lot more situations. Again, because look, we're not talking about, who do we want to plan the church picnic with here? This is
neither one.
This is assuming that we're intergalactic bounty hunters and we have a crew, and it's like, now
if we had a guild, right? Who would you hire?
Yeah, if we were like a Grief Karga, let's say.
Yes, and this is the the National Bounty Hunter Association draft. If you have the first pick,
right,
right, you had if we're doing a draft day, it's National Bounty Hunter Association draft 2025. You have the number one pick, and these are your choices. Who do you pick for your team?
All right, well, and of course, Universal had said Boba Fett. He said, on my watch, he would be used to his full potential. He goes on to say, George never expected much from Boba Fett. I don't understand that thinking. And then, who would win in a fight? Boba. So, yeah. It again, I think it goes back to what we said at the beginning of this thing. I mean, there's a couple of different things here. Number one, yeah, I mean, he's widely regarded as the best bounty hunter. George basically went in that direction. He didn't expect that much from him at first, but I think the expanded universe effect pretty much changed his mind. Because then he started, of course, incorporating his origin story into Attack of the Clones, and on it goes. Now, granted, people have taken that, like with the Book of Boba Fett, especially his appearance in The Mandalorian. That's the Boba Fett that, we sort of expected in the original trilogy, which didn't happen. But, Dragonfly basically says, I agree at first, but after episode 2, George put Boba Fett over. Yeah, and I think that's why he was giving him the whole backstory. And then, of course, the Clone Wars, that was a big one, too. The Clone Wars was even though he was still a kid for pretty much all of it, I think that's definitely the case. So do you have anything else you want to add before I put this chart up?
I think that much like even in real life, we have a lot of celebrities, athletes, entertainers, right, that we would probably herald as like the greatest of all time, right? And I think that title is um subjective because I think you have to look at the rubric as far or what rubric are you basing those things on. And I think that at the time most people would probably say Boba Fett because that's what was presented to us. That's all that we had really was Boba Fett. Now, granted, we didn't get a whole lot of stories about Bosk and Aura Singh, and we didn't get a whole lot of story or
Not until the expanded universe,
not
anyway.
to the expanded universe. And that's what I'm saying. Like, and a lot of those things, eh, they're going to put Boba Fett out there because George said it. So, and I get it that okay, if the creator says it, then it kind of has to be true, right? But I think that no one planned for these other bounty hunters. Like, we got Din, we've got Cad Bane, we have Black Chrysanthemum, we've got um uh
Well, you
there's a
got
host of
Bosk, you got IG-88, you got
IG-88, that's the
Orlam,
other
you've
one.
got,
Yeah, you got so many of
Zuckus,
them.
you got, and those guys, a lot of those guys, first of all, remember, they were in Empire Strikes Back. See, everybody forgets that. It's not that
Even the
George Lucas
guy,
didn't have like a bunch of bounty hunters. He did. Now, you can arguably say he didn't necessarily flesh them out that much in the films, but he
right,
did
and that
basically have a backstory for each of them. That's what the expanded universe guys used to write their
mhm,
books. They weren't really just making this stuff up out of thin air. Lucas actually presented to them. And then, of course, you had the comics, which he also influenced a little bit. So, I mean, there is a little. It's. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's not like they were fully fleshed out like they are today. But
right,
to say that they weren't either, Boba Fett was kind of like the only game in town, or he was definitely the one prominently featured, obviously. But I mean,
right.
there was a lot more to their stories and everything. It's just a lot of the casual fans obviously never were going to lock into that. Because, you had
True.
that one scene in Empire Strikes Back. I mean, you know,
Yeah. Well, I
half the
mean,
time
and
they're
I
just
think
standing there, right?
well, I think also like you got that one guy that we saw in and I think what really made it interesting, and I really love Dave Filoni for doing this, was that whole arc where they had when um Obi-Wan went undercover as a bounty hunter
Yeah, that was
and
a good one.
they had that whole box game
Mm-hmm.
where it's basically like testing their skills and what they could do and all of that. I think that was a really, really great concept because now you're starting to see, okay, how these other bounty hunters, how good they really are. And I forgot the one with the little Kung Lao hat. He was always one of my favorite. I forgot his name. I think his name started with an O or something.
What?
um, remember the one bounty hunter? He kind of had the big Kung Lao from Mortal Kombat, that big brim hat that he would sometimes use and throw at people. He's almost like a weird version of
Odd
Odd
Job?
Job or Odd Job, right? Yeah, but he was always cool. Um, but yeah, if I had to, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that at the time, if we were doing this, having this conversation back, let's say even in the early 2000s, I think everybody would say hands down it would be Boba Fett. But I think now that we've had these other bounty hunters surface, I think that does cause for a pause to reevaluate. Like, okay, is Boba Fett really still the number one man? Is he the Michael Jordan or not?
Well, I mean, and he's still certainly in
I'm
a
not saying
lot
he's
of
still
these books.
like top five, definitely.
He's still written that way. I mean, he's still written to be one of the best. Um, but yeah, I mean, certainly there's could be other fan favorites though. It used to be that Boba Fett was just hands down, nobody was going to even be close. Although I have to say, I like Bosk was somebody that I latched onto in some ways even more than Boba Fett. I mean, not yeah, he was more interesting to me because he he was kind of a cool character and he was left out, but he was without question like up there, you know. And Boba Fett in some ways feared Bosk, so there was that. All right, we got some other chats and then we'll put this thing up. So Dragonfly says Boba Fett had a huge misconception that he was evil, not a good guy, but in Legends he became Mandalore and helped save the day from Young and helped Jaina fight Jason. And yeah, I mean that's true. I mean there was definitely, he is more like kind of a neutral character basically. You know, he's gonna go wherever the money is.
Mm-hmm.
And they did do that. I mean, you know, his original origin story was like his name was like Jaster Real or something weird like that, and you know, he was like Lucas just completely blew all that apart with Attack of the Clones. But you know, I mean, that's the other thing you got to look at too, right? Is that the origin stories change. Now, granted, it ultimately by the time of the original trilogy, it doesn't really alter the character all that much. But it's true that there was also the thing originally that they were not Mandalorians, that even with Jango in the picture, that those two, the Fetts, basically stole the armor and they were pretenders to the throne. And then, of course, find out in The Mandalorian that, nope, really a Mandalorian. So, don't know how that works yet. Because
even with Boba, like, why wouldn't you say Jango?
Well, yeah. And I mean, that's the other thing that was a little dangerous too, right? Was when they created Jango, it was almost like they created, I mean, it was essentially Boba Fett. Now, the reason why is you probably would say Jango, except Jango died. Boba Fett was still around. During the time period we're talking, he was the best, and because he was an unaltered clone of Jango, it just sort of cements it. I guess that's... All right. Dragonfly says Cad Bane is used to stand in for that villain's bounty hunter gunslinger that people thought Boba was, which is, that's basically true. Enbo, was that the one you're thinking of?
Yes, there you go. Embo.
All right.
O in there somewhere.
Well, Dom joins us, which is unsurprising because he's going to be coming to the shop tomorrow. He says, do these two bounty hunters actually hit shots, or do they have stormtrooper aim?
Oh, no, they actually hit shots.
Yeah, very much hit shots.
Yeah, they're definitely...
And to be fair, you know, this brings up something that we talked about in Andor. One of the reasons why we loved Andor so much is because it actually made the stormtroopers threatening and menacing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where they became almost comical by the end. You know, which is sad because the stormtroopers actually look cool and they look sinister, but they were turned into almost a joke. Well, much like the the stormtroopers of Andor, the bounty hunters hit quite a bit. And I mean, it's not even close. And then Universal says, speaking of Luke, did you guys hear that Mark Hamill says he is officially done with the Luke character? Yes. I saw that interview 2 days ago, I think, is when it came out. But I still don't know. I mean, I believe him in the sense of with the films. He probably isn't going to be in, if they ever get this Rey movie off the ground, you know, he probably won't be in there. I mean, who knows? You know, a lot of these guys say that, and then you throw a ton of money at them, and magically it's like, well, you know, I started to miss the character, or, you know, they come up with some story. It's like, no. You know, I mean, at least that's the one thing I admired about Harrison Ford. He basically was just like, look, they just threw a ton of money at me. I couldn't say no. You know? But he did come to an appreciation, though. Whereas, you know, I remember he admitted that. I mean, I couldn't believe that he actually showed up to the celebration. I mean, I would have bet my life that he would never have done that. So, fortunately, I didn't have to do that. Right. But yeah, I mean, we'll see if that holds true. I could still see Hamill voicing Luke. But look, it's time. If they want to tell any stories with Luke Skywalker, they got to get somebody like Sebastian Stan or something like that to do it. You can't... I guess you could make the argument that the better they get at de-aging, you could almost do it, but, you know, the window just passed, man. They should have done a lot of these stories like in the 90s or something, or the 2000s at least. You know? It's just a little bit of
Absolutely.
a too little, too late. Carrie Fisher's unfortunately no longer with us. I mean, what's
Yeah.
the point? Just recast the characters. All right. Dragonfly says Django Fett open season is still canon to me. I remember that. Universal said, I don't think there is a Rey movie. The new writer they hired is working on other projects. Yeah, I know. I know. It does seem less and less likely that we're going to ever see this movie that was supposedly going to shoot, by the way, like what, last April or something? Like a year ago, April, I'm talking about. All right. And then he goes on to say, Mangold's writers also working on other projects as well. All right. So, with that said, what I thought we would do is put up this handy little chart on the strengths and weaknesses, the loyalty, um, their overall like value, I guess, to the team. So here you have a comparison between Boba Fett and Cad Bane, right? So strength wise, obviously you have the Mandalorian armor with Beskar durability. That's a big strength. Advanced tracking skills, jetpack with integrated weapons, which much like the utility belt seem to be expanding with every appearance of this character. And then of course the hand-to-hand and range combat expert, or basically expertise that he has. So that's his strengths. Now, of course, with Cad Bane, you get an exceptional marksman duelist, you get a tactical genius, and he's improvisational, which is important. Advanced gadgets, jet boots, breathing tubes, and ruthless efficiency. Weaknesses on both sides. On Boba Fett, he's overconfident and arrogant. He has emotional impulsiveness. He's a solo operative mindset, and he has very much tactical rigidity, right? So he's not, once he has something in his mind, he's going to go with that. On the other hand, with Cad Bane's weaknesses, you have a lack of morality and ruthlessness, which, I mean, there was some elements of that being his strength, but that's also a huge weakness. Overall, overly risk taking, poor team loyalty, ego driven. So, when you factor some of this stuff in and you're thinking about a crew guy, this might actually play into it a little bit. Like, all right, the guy's skilled, but you know what? Not sure. And this, of course, is reflected in their loyalty scores. Loyalty score for Boba Fett is like a 7 out of 10, whereas with Cad Bane, it's only 3 out of 10. Boba Fett's loyal when respect is earned, especially after turning over a new leaf in the Book of Boba Fett, because they did soften his character a little bit. But, Cad Bane is loyal only to credits, and he'll turn on allies if it benefits him. And you don't even have to look any further than his whole little arc in Tales of the Underworld. I said that right, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's like I don't even know anymore.
I know,
So their
right?
overall value to the team. With Boba Fett, you get a balanced asset. I mean, he's a strong fighter, he's strategic, he's reliable, with leadership potential under the right conditions, and of course, for high value, solo missions, you got to go with Cad Bane. If you're looking for an assassin or any kind of tactical sabotage, the problem is, though, he is risky in long term group dynamics, as all this basically said on this chart. So, I'll leave this up for a little bit. I mean, given a lot of that, we can dissect this and tear it apart.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly everybody watching is encouraged to do this with us, but yeah, I mean, when you see it like this in a comparison chart,
Yeah.
how do you think that plays out now?
Uh, honestly,
Still going
I'm
Cad
still,
Bane, huh?
I'm still going Cad Bane, and the reason being is because of, uh, I'm not necessarily looking for a team player per se. Like, I don't think bounty hunting is always a team sport. Sometimes you do need the ISO. Sometimes I need a guy who can do what I need to get done very well. And that's the thing about a guild, right? A lot of times you might send some of your best guys for certain missions because they're going to get the job done, and it's not going. And I think you can do that with Cad Bane. I think you can send him pretty much anywhere and he's good, especially if you send him solo.
Well,
Now,
I would agree with you if that's what we're talking about.
mhm,
But what we were talking about is who are you going to have on a crew? You know,
well,
if you're kind of traveling as a crew and you're dealing with, okay, we're going to work together, we're going to do this mission, you know, we're going to split the money evenly, you know how that usually goes. I mean, the thing is like it's not so much who would you hire. It's not so much of a, hey, I got a job and I'm going to hire a bounty hunter to do it. In fact, if we were talking about that, I would say that this would be a lot closer of a battle because don't forget, you know, Boba Fett has a very much a solo operative mindset as well. You
mhm.
know, he'll pretty much, he's relentless. So both of these guys, I think a lot of their weaknesses and loyalty issues probably don't matter as much if you're hiring these guys. I mean, other than they might actually screw you over. You know, like they might just, you know, whatever they find, they might just, all right, you know, see ya, and you never see them
Mhm.
again. But I think when you're talking about a group dynamic, I think that might change things a little bit.
I think with a even in that scenario, I think I still would take Cad Bane. Here's why. When we saw the episode where they were the whole training thing that they were doing, why they chose the box as because the guy was trying to hire like a certain crew to take out this, to get. I think they were trying to get Palpatine. If I'm not mistaken. That was
I
the
think so.
mission.
I vaguely remember the episode, but I remember enough of it to talk about it. Yeah.
And Cad Bane pretty much came up with the plan for it. And the thing is that because he's so tactical and he can improv, that's another thing too. Is like sometimes plans go awry and you need somebody who can quickly think on a dime to make something happen. And I think Cad Bane would be my guy because he would know how to actually get things done. And because he's not as you see on the screen, Boba Fett has tactical rigidity. So if he's just like, oh, this is the way we're going to do it, and that's the only way we're going to do it, Cad Bane might see, well, you're not considering this though, and that's the person I want, the person who's going to almost consider everything.
Well, I would normally say that, and then I'll get to the chats because there's some interesting ones. But let's not forget though, when Jabba the Hutt wanted a right hand man, it was Boba Fett. You
Hmm.
know, when Vader. Now, granted, I mean, I know the Cad Bane character hadn't been written yet, so let's just everybody slow down. But but in universe, you know,
Right.
Boba Fett seems to be the go-to guy for just about everything, you know?
Hmm.
And I mean, there is that. Whereas I think that it's interesting because, you know, one of the things about Cad Bane actually not being a team player so much, you could tell that a lot of his, and I think that that's basically I don't know, I think that's almost like um, just because of what happened. Because if you remember, he was pretty loyal to to the mentor that he had.
Hmm.
You know, so I mean, and
Laszlo.
he was fairly loyal to that crew. Now, granted, there's probably a certain point, but I think when we watch like Tales of the Underground, you see
Underworld.
some of this. And of course, Universal, I don't think had been watching us for a little bit because basically asked Eric, last time I was here, you hadn't seen Tales of the Underground, Underworld. He's
Underworld.
doing it too.
Yeah.
Have you seen it now? And if so, did you enjoy like it? And if not, why not? No, liked it very much. And in fact, last Sunday, if you want to go catch up, we did a whole review on it.
Hmm.
We didn't do one of these like episode by episode things because we would have been on episode 2 right now. So we basically did Tales of the Underworld. Last Sunday, we just pretty much did a review of the show. right? Both story arcs, both the Asajj Ventress one and the Cad Bane one. And we enjoyed it very much. I mean, it was a really well done show. I mean, it's funny because the animation stuff tends to be the stuff that I think is done. I don't know why the live action people can't take a clue from the animation people. And part of it is, I think, Dave Filoni, we've gotten into this a million times, and, we can talk about it tonight, too, if you want. But the problem is Filoni has more experience in animation, not so much live action, so, we'll see. And now Universal has a question for you. He says, Daryl, the next project with Star Wars will be Darth Maul. You like the Darth Maul character, and if so, will you be watching the upcoming show?
Oh, mighty.
I know, right?
It's like
You see me like fall, like people are like firing off guns, and it comes in. Hey, that happened to me once when it was the 4th of July. I was in my room and a bullet, like, fortunately the window was open, penetrated the screen, flew right in my room. If I had actually been like walking around, I would have been hit.
Wow.
Fortunately, I was on my bed. I'm like, what is that? I'm finding I'm like, really?
So you were literally on your deathbed. All right. So, sorry. Anyway, to your question, yes, I do love Maul. I do love the Maul character. I think everyone does. That's why they keep bringing them back every 30. I mean, any chance that Star Wars gets, man, they're bringing Darth Maul back, man. This guy is like the Jason Voorhees of the Star Wars universe, I swear. But yes, I would definitely be watching it. And he happens to be one of my favorites, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
But to the point of, this is something that wasn't on the chart, which I'm surprised. Cad Bane has more experience dealing, at least from what I gather, could be wrong. I haven't read all the books concerning Boba Fett, but it seems like Boba Fett, by the time he became the Boba Fett, the Jedi were gone. Whereas Cad Bane was doing...
No. He actually, one of the things about Boba Fett was that he used to collect the little braids from Padawans. That was like one of his things. He was like an expert Jedi hunter. Now, again, there's a little bit of a discrepancy there, right? Because on one hand, in order to make that work in more current canon, and by current canon, I'm even mean like the prequel trilogy. Because the problem is Lucas shifted Boba Fett's origins.
Right.
So it still kind of works, because Boba Fett started to get old enough around the time. Because remember, he was hunting Mace Windu. He was trying to get his revenge on him. So he was, and then he started getting... He was still a kid, but he was, he was like 21, 22 by the time the end of the era was starting to hit, right? So, I mean, there was a little bit of that, because don't forget, during the time that the Inquisitors and all that were hunting Jedi, and all these people were hunting Jedi, so was Boba Fett. Now...
Yeah.
In the old expanded universe, when his old origin story was more intact, that's when it was a little bit more out there, like, yeah, this guy was like feared among the Jedi. And what I think that they were trying to do was Lucas was trying to respect a little bit of that, because if you remember, he had Jango going up against the Jedi and not only holding his own, but, I mean, he was actually like winning in some cases. So I think that was Lucas's way of kind of honoring it. So the idea is, look, clone, it's kind of the same deal. So again, depending on which continuity you're talking about, it's a little bit less. I mean, it's a little bit more murky, but generally speaking, he was among the best at fighting the Jedi.
Well, I could definitely say Cad Bane was really good at it as well, and the fact that
because he was in the whole Clone Wars thing, and then they bring him into Rebels too.
He was in Rebels, and that's the thing. He was running into them all the time, and even the fact that the reason why he has those breathing tubes is specifically for Jedi, because in case they tried to force choke him, he still was able to get oxygen into his lungs. So the fact that he was always inventive and he even went through like a very painful procedure just to combat the Jedi in that manner, or any other Force user for that matter. You know,
Yeah,
so
and I mean, you know, because again, it's the same kind of thing. They gave Cad Bane that. They decided to make the Mandalorian armor Beskar armor that lightsabers couldn't penetrate in order to bulk
hmm
that whole thing up. So I mean, there was things that they did to each one to try to emphasize, like, yes, these guys can both take on Jedi, and it was that sort of thing. All right, Universal. There's like a bunch of chats now. It says, everyone in chat, my friends made a Star Wars fan film. It's the most watched fan film on YouTube. Have any of you seen it? I don't know. What's it called? A lot of them out there, man. Dragonfly says, it's not fair, Eric. Cad Bane didn't exist. Haha, see, I knew it was... Somebody always says that. Dragonfly says, my sister is watching me with... She brought up Cad likes to be in charge. Is this the part where I do something lame and like, so, you have a sister?
Oh.
Watching too. Yeah, no, that's true. Well, both of them probably like to be in charge, actually.
Sure. I mean, we saw that even in, who was that? Is that Mandalorian or is that Book of Boba Fett? When they walked into that bar and that's when they had that whole when Boba had that whole argument with Kate Sackhoff and
Bo-Katan.
Bo-Katan, thank you. Bo-Katan and her little
the other two
crew. Yeah, the other two.
Or
they
so
got to
bad
that whole
with
bar
this.
fight. I know.
No, that was a Mandalorian.
Okay.
Yep.
And
see, that was cool. So it was in the Mandalorian.
Yeah, right. So I mean, and that was a whole thing too, just about who's going to lead and who had the rights and all that type of thing. So he was always trying to, assert his dominance and things like that, and rightly so, understood. But I don't know. It just seems to me like, while I do love and respect Boba Fett, I just think that at the end of the day, I probably would want Cad just because I think he has an X factor that Boba doesn't.
Yeah, I mean and I get it. Like I said, I've initially chosen Cad Bane, even though, I mean, I have a lot of history in reading about Boba Fett, obviously, and he's been the guy. In fact, he was depicted so, I don't know if I want to use the word fearsome or what, but that was why we kind of hated when we saw Return of the Jedi. We're like, what's this? This is like slapstick comedy. What is he, Chevy Chase under there? What's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
right. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
This is not the Boba Fett that we signed up for. I mean, we were sitting here thinking that, okay, man, we can't wait till Return of the Jedi because now you're going to see more Boba Fett. And
that's the thing, is like Star Wars always happens to have really cool characters that they misuse.
It's not so much that they misuse it, it's just that they make it for kids. I guess you could actually make that, by definition, misusing, right?
I was about to say, yes. Because it's like, you have a guy who's a bounty hunter. I mean, the name itself, like bounty hunter, just gives you like, okay, this guy's like a butt kicker. And then he's, like you said, he's like, Boba Fett, where? Like, okay, this is so
like,
stupid.
Really, dude?
And he looks really cool. He doesn't say anything. He's kind of has that grovel in his voice, and but we saw the same thing with Captain Phasma. Another one. Ugh. Looked cool. Menacing.
I'm at the point now where if a Star Wars character looks cool, I just automatically assume, like, yeah, they're gonna misuse this person.
Yeah.
Actually, Cad Bane might be the only exception to that rule.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think they often bring these characters in, and for whatever reason, they all have ties to being a stormtrooper. The only one that was successful really was Jango, because they made Boba Fett look weak. They made Captain Phasma look weak.
That's true. Jango, you're right. Jango is the only one. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So he was he's a trooper. So that's what I'm saying. Like that whole trooper model was just kind of like outside of Django, at least visually depicted.
All right, well, Universal's got a really good point here. He says, in Boba's defense, Darth Vader held Boba in high esteem. They had a good dialogue and rapport between each other in Return of the Jedi. You recall, Boba was standing next to Darth Vader in Cloud City when Han shot. Yes, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something that I wanted to bring up a while ago, and then we got sidetracked. Is that Vader? I mean, Boba was like Vader's go-to guy. Now, he knew about the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
And even when Cad Bane, all those guys are around, they wrote that in too. But I think, again, that part of that is just because I don't think that was necessarily so much only skill-based. I think Boba probably had a certain loyalty to Vader. There were rumors, I don't know if this was ever substantiated or not, but there were rumors that Boba Fett knew that he was Anakin Skywalker. I don't know if that was ever, I don't remember if that was ever confirmed or what.
Mm-hmm.
But, that could play into it a little bit too. Let's see. Dragonfly says, yes, we told Jaina to train with Boba to fight her brother. That's right. Forgot about that, actually. Goes on to say, I think it has also been retconned. It's Mandalorian training that is anti-Jedi fighting techniques. It was, but it was retconned in the Clone Wars. That was basically like kind of part of an arc, and especially like when Darth Maul took over Mandalore for a while, and you had a lot of that stuff. So there was a lot that was actually coming in and out from both the novels, the expanded universe, and then you had the Clone Wars, and then you had, so before Disney bought it, I mean, about the only good thing that I can say Disney did, at first I thought it was a terrible decision, but then after a while I started to go, well, I think they should have based episodes 7 through 9 on Zahn's novels, and I think they should have used the old expanded universe as the foundation of their new canon. But I do think it was a good idea for them to go, look, we got to start over and just make everything count and try to right size this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Universal talking about the Darth Maul show is called Darth Maul Apprentice, has 34 million views. He's talking about the fan film, so we'll have to check that out. Coming in very late, Ted Adam Green. Yeah, usually you're the first one that messages us, tell us you got to go to bed, and you'll catch up with us tomorrow. You're basically doing the reverse. All right, well, we'll try not to keep Ted up too late here. He says, coming in very late, we'll catch this one out on the rerun this week. Hope you all are doing great. All right. Dragonfly says, the relationship of Vader and Fett in the original trilogy is much deeper after episode 2 in the Clone Wars. I would 100% agree. And then finally he says, I think they would know each other even if it isn't spoken. Yeah, because, you have to think of it in terms of like this. And this is something that I often point out, usually when we're talking about the whole Anakin Skywalker arc. It's like this guy was a super prominent Jedi. And then he disappears, and all of a sudden Vader comes in. And I mean, I think a lot of people were at least suspicious. I know Bail Organa was.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole, it's like, Batman and Bruce Wayne, like you never see the two together.
Right, exactly.
Like, okay. But yeah, I mean, you could say that. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think that. Because if you put it in the universe, right? Granted, don't get me wrong. Those guys, Anakin was prominent. So was Obi-Wan. So was Yoda. Okay, but those guys disappeared. So why would you necessarily think that would be Anakin?
Well,
because Obi-Wan.
Yes. So Obi-Wan, we know, went and became a space butcher. So there is that. Yoda, I mean, unless he's like wearing lifts, like very high
Yeah,
lifts.
very, very high lifts.
But it was
And
also assumed, even though it was somewhat covered up, but I think it was assumed that the Emperor killed Vader, or not Vader, Yoda in that battle in Revenge of the Sith. Again, that we all know that's not the case, and the Emperor was like, he wasn't so nuts about the fact they didn't find the body, but
well, because man, how would you even answer that? Like, okay, you mean this old feeble man who we saw now is disfigured? He beat this Jedi Master, Grandmaster. How?
yeah, it seems
Like
like you'd have
that's
to,
that's very that's
right.
not very plausible. I'm sorry.
Well, it's not so much that it isn't plausible, but you'd have to be like, really? So what are you then,
What you got
buddy?
going on, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Now you tell me like, okay, you surrounded him with like 150 troopers or something. You just blasted them at one
Well,
time.
and I think that's basically the idea that,
Maybe
they were, I mean, I'm sure they're not
they
saying,
overwhelmed
I
him or something like that. That's
single-handedly,
about the only way. Yeah, that's about the only way
it's
you
like
can
I
make that
stuck my
even
foot out, he tripped, he fell down the pods, it's kind of one of those things, right? I
right.
mean, yeah, because I mean, even that's what was so funny when Anakin started piecing together that, hey man, how do you know the dark arts? And how do you
Yeah.
it's like, wait, you're a Sith Lord, Palpatine's like, yes, but hold on.
Yeah. Before you do something rash.
Right. I mean, yes, okay, granted, you want to kill me, you probably should. On and on it goes. But hear me out. That was like one of the best. That whole thing was the best because I did not expect that to happen. Well, I should say that when I read the novel, I did not expect that to happen. Still, the novel was so much better.
Oh yeah.
So much better than the movie. It's the only time that you did the same thing, right? Didn't you read it?
Yep.
Yeah.
We were reading it basically at the same time.
Yes, we were. That's right. Because we wanted to finish before we saw the movie.
Yep.
And it's like, it's the only time that I read the novelization version before seeing the movie. And to this day, I regret that.
I know, right?
To this day. Because that one, what's funny is, yeah, Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones had a lot of, they had a lot of really cool expanded scenes. But man, it's like Revenge of the Sith had like entire plot points, dialogue, expanded, like stuff that was so much cooler than what ended up in the movie. And you're just like, man, what a mistake it was to read this before. I mean, it actually, and I think you said you had the same reaction, that it somewhat diminished my enjoyment of it.
Yeah, because you're waiting for certain parts to happen and they don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially like the whole freeing the Emperor scene in the beginning. It's like, wait, that's it? This thing went on for like 100 pages in the novel with all kinds of cool dialogue that, foreshadowed certain things and that happened later in the story. I mean, yeah, okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole, at least any more than I already have. So Universal says Boba Fett and Darth Vader fought each other twice and they both ended in a draw. Yeah, I believe that was, I think that was in the comic series actually. It was either one of the Darth Vader ones, or it might have been in the what was it? It's not Crimson Reign, that came later. That whole bounty hunter thing where they had Kira, like Kira fought Vader, and
oh yeah,
that was cool. See, Kira's another character that I would love to see appear in more things. I was gonna say a lot more of, but
yeah.
got to be careful with the phrasing on that one. In
Book of Boba Fett.
Thank you. Boba beat Cad. Case closed. And again, this discussion isn't necessarily who the best bounty hunter is. I think everybody from Lucas on down have all said that Boba Fett is the best, most skilled. He's going to be, that's not, we can discuss that if you want, because, this show is open. We can talk about anything you really want in the Star Wars universe. But this is really more about who would you want on your team? Like if you were going to go out on some sort of
This is the draft. Again, if this is the Bounty Hunter Association draft,
Yeah, let me get
and
this.
you're the general manager of the guild, and you have the number one pick, are you picking Cad Bane to lead your team, or are you picking Boba Fett to lead your team?
Right. Or, I mean, if you want to even get it to be a little bit more personal, if you were putting together a crew, and you can't say both, if you were putting together a crew of a bunch of bounty hunters that were going to go out on some sort of a job, which one of these two guys would you want on your crew? And again, I mean, if it helps, we can have this chart back up. But yeah, I don't think that anybody is necessarily, debating
Ability.
ability or who's like, I mean, Boba Fett is basically, as David would say, the GOAT of bounty hunters. That really isn't. I mean, even Lucas basically says that. So even if there was like some, fanboy of some other bounty hunter that tried to do it, it's like, well, you know, basically the guy that created these characters is telling you, so you just have to kind of go with that. All right. Dragonfly says Sidious told everyone the Crimson Guard saved him, and that's why people think, oh, what was that in? Was that a comic thing?
Yeah, now that I don't remember.
I mean, it would make sense, though.
Yeah, it would make sense.
I mean, because again, everybody sleeps on the Crimson Guards. Those guys are elite fighters. Dragonfly says it's his theory. Well, it's a good one.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, you had me like trying to think of.
Right. We're
like, wait a minute. Wait, what comic was this? I mean, Glad you clarified that for us. Universal says,
honest. I appreciate that.
That is, yeah, exactly. If I had a team, it comes down to who I could trust more. It's still Boba.
Okay.
Yeah, well, fair point. Because, Boba is probably the one that you can trust more. But, to play devil's advocate on this one, it's like you could probably trust Boba more. And maybe you could even, I don't know, this next point could go to Boba as well. But you also have to look at, well, depending on what this is, who can actually get the job done? Because the idea is if you're going to hire somebody like Cad Bane, now again, this is not, you're some guy with a lot of credits that wants something, and so you need to hire a bounty hunter to get it for you or take care of it or, whatever the case may be. You're actually one of these guys, right? Like imagine that you're, like an Aura Singh type or, even Hondo. Hondo's more of a pirate than a bounty hunter, but, kind of the same deal, right? Still part of the criminal, underworld, right? So the idea is you would only have to worry about Cad Bane double crossing you, and theoretically, you could probably take care of that. Or you could put measures in place that maybe might prevent that or deter him from doing that for some reason. But it could be the difference between, and this is where I would probably, I mean, I'm not trying to cheese out on this thing or anything like that. But for me, it would also probably depend on what the job is, to be honest. Because certain jobs are probably going to maybe be more conducive to their strengths or weaknesses or whatever the case may be, right? So there might be a certain type of job that Boba Fett might be better suited for, or maybe one Cad Bane might be suited for. So I think you do have to look at, hey, you got to figure out, okay, you might be able to trust Boba Fett more, but is he going to be the guy that could actually get this done?
Right, and that's what ultimately, for me, that's the ultimate goal. Is like the efficiency. Now, don't get me wrong, Boba Fett is very efficient, but I would also look at it from the standpoint of, like you said, it depends on the job, and I see Cad Bane being more cunning than Boba Fett. Boba Fett is, I'll put it to you this way, Boba Fett is more samurai. he kind of has a code that he kind of lives by. He's very good at what he does, and he's highly skilled and efficient. Where Cad Bane is more of a ninja, where he really doesn't have much of a honor code. However, I'm gonna do what I need to do. He's adaptable and he's gonna do what he needs to do to get the job done by any means necessary.
Well, a lot of people have rightly, in my opinion, compared Boba Fett to almost the Vader of the bounty hunter world. You know, Boba Fett is pretty much regarded as so skilled and powerful. He doesn't really need to be stealthy, cunning, any of that. He's powerful enough to just go in and get whatever he needs done, you know? But on the other hand, I also think that lack of subtlety could also work against him, but it really depends because there's a lot of different new canon books, expanded universe books. You kind of hit the nail on the head earlier too when you were kind of like, okay, and I mean, I could say the same thing. I mean, I probably read more than you have, but I haven't read like every little thing that contains Boba Fett or Cad Bane.
Hmm.
So, I mean, who knows? There might be some stuff where you're like, oh, well, I didn't really know that. Or, you're pointing to some little thing that he's done. I mean, it's no different than if you had only seen Luke Skywalker in the films, like the original trilogy,
Yeah.
you would have no idea what he's actually capable of.
Hmm.
You would actually have to read like a lot of the casual fans. Okay, yeah, they get it. He's powerful, whatever. But I mean, in the
How
films, let's face
powerful.
it, he did take out Palpatine and Vader, kind of. But
You're right.
you know, you don't really know until you read a lot of this stuff, and that's part of the. It's part of the thing that's nice about the whole Star Wars franchise, but it's also something that I think works against it in a lot of ways, especially on some of these newer projects where you and I talk about this all the time, where, oh, Palpatine returned. Yeah, where do we get this information from? Like Fortnite. I mean, why do I have to consume all these different things to put together pieces of a puzzle that should be, if you're introducing it into this particular film, then it should be resolved there, or at least some exposition,
Hmm.
backstory, have some guy come up and say, hey, you remember the almost Family Guy style? Hey, remember the time when Palpatine came back? And, that kind of thing. But a lot of times Star Wars doesn't do that. And so it's really up to us to go and,
Seek it out.
yeah, either seek it out or just, try to get your
Stumble
hands on
across it.
as many things as you can. Okay, so Universal says if it comes down to who is more intimidating, it's obviously Cad Bane. Yeah, I would agree with that. And then he says, but as you suggested on my team, I would want the guy that has the most experience, which I feel is Boba. I would use Cad Bane in special situations or special missions. That's actually a good way to look at it too. Maybe what you do is you use, Cad Bane for some of your more targeted surgical strikes, like you have an assassination or some particular thing that you want to do, and then of course Boba Fett's like the general use guy.
Yeah, it could work that way.
You know, I mean, I it's kind of tough to say, really. I mean, you know, because again, a lot of this depends on, and we purposely kept this a little bit loose, right? I mean, I think a lot depends on the specificity of the mission,
Yeah.
because I think that realistically, if you look at just about any heist movie, anything, I mean, even in real life to a degree, it's like, sure, you have a particular group, say some criminal organization. And I'm not talking about like a really big one. I mean, like, your small one, the whatever guys or, some whatever they call. They have a name for their crew,
Like the
right?
Four Horsemen from Now You See Me.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good example. Or like the Ocean's 11 guys,
Hmm.
things like that, right? I was trying to think of a real world example. Even when you think in terms of like mafias and things like that, that's a little bit
SEAL
bigger.
Team 6.
Yeah, but that's part of the U.S. government, though.
Yeah,
So
true.
I'm talking about like basically like what you were talking about, where you have a small criminal group. Sometimes you have that. Sometimes you have a traveling group that pretty much stays together, almost like a band.
Yeah.
And they just, they have different jobs that come up, either they're hired to do stuff or maybe they need something. And so they plan on stealing something. Okay, you have that type. But more often than not, you'll have maybe 2 or 3 core people and they'll just hire people on based on whatever the job is. It's like, oh, we want to steal this. Well, they got like this crazy safe. So there's this like freelance safe cracker that we know who's like one of the best in the business. We got to hire him to, join the crew or whatever. So you get situations like that.
It's like David's favorite franchise, Fast and the Furious.
There you go. Even though you can almost say that that overlaps in a way because you do have pretty much, even with Mission Impossible, like the group changed over time, but eventually by the time it hit like 3 or 4 or something like that, it was at least the same 3 guys, and then you would add to them. So
Yeah.
you do have that sort of dynamic. And of course, Fast and Furious started following the Mission Impossible model. So yeah, you pretty much have this like core group, and sometimes it's interchangeable. Like not everybody goes on the mission, or sometimes they all do, or sometimes they have people coming in from the outside that are introduced, that kind of thing. And so I think that that's an approach you might take if we're talking more realism. Like, all right, if we were really going to be doing this, because, I mean, the other way that you can basically just, you could basically say, well, in reality, I'd probably take both of these guys. Why do I have to choose? Right. And of course, I could throw something back out there like, well, you can only afford one of them.
Right. There you go.
All right. So, Universal says the newest Mission Impossible has 2 great action scenes. And Mission is worth it just to see them. Yeah, I agree. I went and saw it. What day was that? Like Thursday? Yeah, it was Thursday because Karate Kid Legends had just come out. But I ended up seeing the Mission Impossible movie. And it was the previous few days that I had to rewatch the first part because I didn't want to go into this one. The first part came out like 2 years ago. So I was like, let me go rewatch that. They're all streaming right now on Paramount Plus. So I'm like, all right, let me go rewatch part 1, which I'm glad I did because, it's not like I couldn't have followed the plot, but it definitely made it a lot better that I rewatched that first. But yeah, man. I mean, it's true. Those 2 action scenes that you're talking about are worth the price of admission alone. I don't know. I think the second one, I felt the time a lot less than the first one. They were both very good, but I don't know. I think it was like Mission Impossible, like 5 or something that I love a lot. 3 was really good with Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
Now we're branching out into our little entertainment exchange show.
Yeah.
That's still to come. By the way, the YouTube channel has been created. There's nothing on it yet, but if you want to go and subscribe to it, just do a search for Entertainment Exchange, and that's us. That's where you're going to find this kind of a show, this format, but not talking about just Star Wars. It's like everything else. Could be any kind of movies. It could be any television shows, streaming. Might even get into some books. Games occasionally. But film and TV, that's basically the deal. Universal says, congrats on 21,000 subscribers. If only they were active. Because as you can see, we're still not monetized yet. It's like all we need is for people to just watch the majority of the show. So that way we can get the watch hours in. So that way we can start getting monetized. But even though we have all these subscribers, probably not something I should be putting out on a live show right now, but we have all these subscribers, and that's awesome. We appreciate everybody that does. But man, if even like 5% watched more of the content, we'd be all set, man. We would be able to do it. Universal says, I subbed and liked. I have over 10,000 books. If anyone is looking for one, I probably have it. Jeez, dude, you got like a regular library over there. I mean, I had, it's funny because I used to have like tons of books, and then I just
changed his name. Well, that's why he's Universal, man. He's got universal knowledge.
Exactly. Right. We all thought it was just the company, right?
It's not just a name, it's a lifestyle with him.
Yeah, hey, I mean, if you're going to do it. I just had to get rid of a bunch of them because it was taking up too much space.
Right.
Now I got everything on the phone. It's like I read everything on the phone. I mean, that's just, kind of my deal. But yeah, all right. Well, I think the consensus is what?
Boba Fett. Everybody knows.
I mean, realistically, that's probably the thing. I know there's some people, and again, I do think the idea of a targeted type of a thing, right, where you take Cad Bane depending on what the job is, Boba Fett depending on what the job is, that makes sense. You guys want to go with that? That's cool. So we appreciate everybody that chatted with us live. But if you are watching this after the fact, then be sure to not only hit the like button, subscribe button, all that good stuff that the algorithm likes, but also leave in the comment section. What are you guys thinking? Who would you take on your crew if it's a choice between Cad Bane or Boba Fett? Or maybe you're going to do the general consensus. Depends on the job. Depends on, another thing we didn't talk about. How much are they charging? Because that's one of the things that you do find is that sometimes, the guy that you want is just too expensive. So you take the next guy. So that's a factor too, so that's perfectly acceptable. So let us know what you guys are thinking. Maybe I'll put this up as a poll. I say that and then I don't do it. I got to do it this time. I'll put it up as a poll. Let us know through the poll, like what you guys want to do. I'll try to put it up on our X feed too, because we're trying to get more traffic there as well. So yeah. All right. You got any like crazy ideas for next week? That was kind of fun.
Nothing has jumped out to mind yet, but I'm sure I'll be putting my thinking helmet on and
yes. And then Universal leaves us with, have a great week, guys. God bless. Go watch Darth Maul Apprentice. Trust me, you'll enjoy it. Well, it sounds cool. Plus, you don't really see too many fan films based on Darth Maul. Everything's usually like Vader-centric or something like that. So, yeah, I'd be up for watching. And, a lot of these fan films, honestly, are just as good or better than the actual movies we're getting nowadays. So, yeah, we'll go check that out. All right, so with that, we'll see you guys next week. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.